we should be going live soon.
Okay, well, I'm going to sign off.
Okay.
Bye. I hope this is a wonderful experience for everybody and we share our stories.
Yeah,
Very,
yeah.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank
yeah.
you for joining us.
Okay, bye for now.
Talk to you
Bye.
soon.
Well, we're here with some of the authors from 20 Shades of Grief. We're excited to have this book as one of our latest publications from Action Takers Publishing. And if you're watching, please head on over to actiontakerspublishing.com/books and pick up your copy. So, Kathy, I'm going to start with you since you're the since you're the brains behind the whole system here. Why don't you talk about why 20 Shades of Grief and what this book meant for you?
Perfect. And yes, it's been a great day and exciting to bring this book out into the world. And as I mentioned when we were talking this morning, Suzanne was kind of the inspiration behind this, as her whole focus is on grief and supporting people as they grieve. And we met in a mastermind a few years ago, and I thought, well, this is a perfect opportunity to really share some of these stories and kind of spread the word on how do we support people who are grieving and how do we help ourselves through the grieving process. And so that's where the whole book started. And so I love the group that we brought together here. And this book is just so filled with amazing stories that will definitely bring tears to your eye, but also inspiration. And there Tanya's got.
Yeah, I got the actual book here.
That's right. We should all get our fancy books.
Yeah, so I mean, I love the idea of this book, and one of the things we're all, pretty much guaranteed, or we are guaranteed, birth and death. And so we're going to have people that we care about, people that we love that are going to pass away. And then how do we go forward from there? And what are the kind of the steps and how do we navigate through the challenges, especially when it's somebody that we really care about or somebody that
Yeah.
holds your family together. So like I talked about my mom in this book, and when she got sick, our whole family dynamic changed because we everybody would go to my mom's house whenever there was a party, a birthday, a anniversary, just for coffee. She was always just inviting people over, and it was her house was just always filled with people. And then when she got sick, everyone just stopped going, and it changed it changed everything. So I think, and the same thing I could imagine if you lose a child or even, losing a job or a divorce, those kind of things. We talk about all of that stuff in here because it's still you're grieving the loss of a person.
Or an experience or a dream or
Yeah.
a plan or an
Or someone moves
expectation or
away
just a
too.
reality.
It could be a best friend moving away when you're little. That stuff stays with us. It doesn't go away.
Yeah. So, Dr. Tanya, why don't you talk about your chapter in the book?
Oh, my chapter is about what I learned from my experience of having a baby that was stillborn after a full-term pregnancy. And what kind of as a doctor, I'm a doctor of chiropractic. I was a massage therapist before that. And what happens when things aren't going right in your body, and that's what your work is, and how that can really impact how you look at things. So we had two little girls from my husband's previous marriage that were waiting for their baby brother to come visit, right? To come see him. And we had to tell them that that wasn't going to happen. So how do you tell little kids? They were like 5 and 6, 6 and 7, something like that. And so we just made it very matter of fact. We're all going to go through this, and it's not so bad because if it was, nobody would do it. And since we all are going to pass on, sometimes people pass when they're little. Sometimes people pass when they're old. Sometimes people pass because they're sick. Some people pass because they're just done. And it's okay. We're all going to do it, and it's just fine. And that's not the scary part. It's not scary for them when we make it matter of fact. And so we have to think about it like that too. You get pretty philosophical when you're trying to work on healing people and it's not working for you. So it also brings up the fact that we're all vulnerable all the time. And what are you going to do about that? For me, it was a thought that came into my mind that said, do you really believe everything happens to the highest good, or do you just say that? And so I had to decide right then, am I going to believe that or not? We get to decide what we believe. That's what free will is all about. We get to decide. So we make a choice. And I went down that road of saying, well, this is going to wreck me and I'm going to drop out of school. I was very close to graduation. I'm going to drop out and I went down that road a little bit in my mind and I went, that's not the direction I want to go. And then I went down the road of going back to finish and thinking about all the people that I could share my experience with that would get something out of it. So there's just a real purpose about Edward Oliver English's short life. And he changed things forever for my husband and I. And so when we're looking at things like that and we're seeing, okay, how does that compare to somebody whose son was 30 years old and dies? Well, here's the thing. You can't really compare. And it's not good to try. Notice everybody's shaking their heads. They're in agreement. You can't do that because your grief is yours. And it's only going to work to your highest good if you allow that. So my point for what I do with my clients and my patients is we look for, where is there some good here? Where's the joy? Where can we find that joy again? We're meant to walk through the valley of the shadow of death, not pitch a tent and live there. And so when we do that, we don't allow, it takes whatever it takes, whatever time it takes. But time doesn't really heal the wounds. Taking some action does. And just like Suzanne actually has been working on this for a long time, and she didn't let that put her down for very long. It doesn't, and for very long, is it a year? Is it 5 years? It doesn't matter, because whatever it is that spurs you on to live your life and to find the joy that's there. I mean, I said, okay, if everything's to the highest good, show me the good. Bring it on. I want to see it. I want to experience it. Put me wherever I need to be for healing. I don't care where that is. And I had lots of different experiences in healing. And one of the major ones was at the Mississippi Valley Blues Festival in Davenport, Iowa, that summer after our son was born in April. And having that experience of a healing experience like that with the Blind Boys of Alabama performing in the tent stage and feeling waves and waves of love flowing through me and knowing that there's so much love for us. It never goes away. It's always there. It's the rock. It doesn't have to move. And we can tap into that anytime we want.
Yeah.
All we have to do is breathe and we can be there with Source. And some days it's great. We had a little launch party this morning too, and I broke down afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah. I think,
32 years ago. Why should I have this upset? But it all came up again, and that's okay. It's going to happen. I'm in a different place in my life than I was then. So I want to just remind people that you're not stuck there. You're in a spiral, and now you're in a new place, and you have this experience of the loss again. So it's not like it's never going to end. It's like I'll get to it again, and I'll be in a new place when I get to it again.
yeah. And I think everyone grieves differently, right? Everyone
Oh, yeah.
has for some people they turn inward, and other people it's, going out and
Out, yeah.
doing. So I think everybody has their own way of dealing with the grief. And that's what makes this book great, is because you see all the different ways and the different stories and how people found to cope and to get better and heal themselves after a loss. So would someone else like to share? Ada,
Sure.
you're unmuted. Yes. Why don't you
I'm
share a little
unmuted. Yeah, I guess.
share a little bit about your story and why you decided to write a chapter in this book.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Sally. And thank you, Kathy, and thank you to my coworkers. Yeah, well, my co-authors. I decided to do this chapter because I had just finished my own book on grief, my own memoir, Serenity After the Storm, and I saw, oh wow, a continuum of writing about grief. And I said, why not? So let's go. And my chapter is on miscarriage and how miscarriage is not seen as something that's grievable, but yet, as we are growing the baby, the fetus, we're connecting to them. Our whole body is changing. We're creating some kind of love and emotions behind this baby, and how we can already picture what they could look like, what their future could be, even what they could smell like. Because don't you just love how a baby just smells? And all those memories just popped up again when I wrote the book, when I wrote the chapter, excuse me. And the chapter was also healing for me, going back to that time when I went through the miscarriage and seeing what helped me, what didn't help me, the processing of the pain again, and just going back to that emotional roller coaster, sort of like what Dr. Tanya said, that when she got out of that, I was exhausted, to tell you the truth, when I finished the call this morning. So emotionally, physically, it does take a toll on you. But it's good that we go through it because we acknowledge that we are still in the process of healing, and just knowing that we love that individual, whether we have them in our arms or not. And till this day, I still think about those miscarriages that I had. One would have been 50, one would have been 40 something, another one would have been 25. So looking back at that and just thinking about what I went through, the first one helped me with the second one, and the second one helped me with the third one. So all of these experiences, and then as life went on, I learned about grounding and how to heal um, my emotions for the day, because not every day is the same. It's an emotional roller coaster, and not everybody grieves the same, as we all learn through our own processes. And just understanding and naming our emotions is so important, and just sitting and understanding what it is that we're going through. Sometimes we're sad, sometimes we're angry, anxious. So the chapter itself just goes through the processes of the pain, the the periods of what I went through, acknowledging myself, and what else I can use to help others with. So grounding is another one that I just love, and I also do yoga classes, and I do yoga myself. So a lot of healing, holistic stuff that I use for myself. And I mentioned it in the chapter for others to see if they want to use it.
Yeah, I think that's
Thank you.
awesome. And I think doing the um the holistic stuff, it really helps us to heal. And I for me, it's always, a lot of times it's been writing. When I feel that I need to release something, I
Yeah, yeah.
it
Journaling. Yeah.
it's a release to
Mhm.
sit down. And I think, for you guys writing this book could have been that another piece of the healing. is sitting down and writing your story and releasing it out into the world, because that's, it's so part of you that sitting and putting it on paper, whether it's with a pen and paper or on a computer, and then saying, here's my story, is a great way to release a lot of that stress and a lot of that tension that comes from holding on to stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We all feel it, and I think, I was the same way. So when I sat down and wrote, feeling those it's like you're feeling those feelings all over again. And then once they're on the paper, it's like, okay, I can put this aside now, So yeah, Ada, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Suzanne, I'm gonna call on you. I know you were instrumental with Kathy to putting this book together. So why don't you talk a little bit about your story in this book?
Yes, Kathy approached me at one of our meetings and was like, I think this needs to be a book. I was like, oh yes, we need chapters, because what's beautiful about this structure is, as you were saying, Sally, you end up with 20 different stories from 20 different perspectives about 20 different kinds of losses, and as we've all identified, we all grieve differently. We grieve each loss differently. So I don't even grieve the same every time. So we need that breadth of perspective so that nobody is feeling alone, because one of the things that really happens when we're grieving is we end up feeling alone and misunderstood and confused and all of that. So that, I think, is part of the magic of this kind of a book, where you have a bunch of different perspectives. So you may not read all 20 chapters. You may find one and go, yeah, that was the nugget, and then pick it up later and read another one, right? My chapter is about really the transformational power of grief. And that for me was an early realization. I had, when my son died, I had just finished my transformational coaching training. So I was very much on that path anyway. And my realization very shortly after he died was that the version of me that had existed before that didn't exist anymore. So if I was no longer who I had known myself to be, I wanted to be very intentional about who I was going to be next. And I say all the time, you are going to be changed. You can have that happen intentionally, or it will happen by accident. And I was very clear that I did not want, the newest version of me to be by accident. So it really covers a little bit of my story, all of the things that I navigated, right, in the immediate aftermath, how that really feels, so people can understand there's nothing wrong with them, right? We're not really given permission in our cultures to grieve. Certainly not in the Western North American version of how grief works. It's supposed to be quiet and quick and private, and that's not really how it works. So what I learned through my own experience, and then how I use that now when I'm working with clients. So I've ended up with a sort of 5-point framework, which works as, an amorphous blob with your amorphous blob of grief, but sort of 5 things that we're aware of. And so I break those down in the chapter, that sense of really needing to navigate first the brain fog, because that sense that your brain doesn't work at all, certainly not the way you recognize, is really important for people to understand that's normal. And then the sort of touchstone that really, I'm just looking down at my iPod case. It's so much a touchstone in my life. It actually says it on my iPad case, is to be conscious and curious. And that for me is the frame for everything. So everything that I'm creating, every decision that I make, it's like, am I conscious? That's about the emotions. Am I tuned into what's happening in my body, what's going on for me? And then am I staying curious, or am I in shame, blame, judgment, all those things that shut curiosity down? Because I knew for me, I needed to stay on that growth path. And even though the growth path looks like baby steps that sometimes are a little bit of a salsa, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, sometimes 2 steps back and you stand still for a while. It really is that sense of like, what's possible now? And that really for me started the very first time I had that realization. I remember it so sharply. I was standing in our kitchen, sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe. And my curiosity went to, when you are sobbing so hard you can't breathe, how do you oxygenate your body? Like, how is my body actually going to stay alive if I keep doing this? And as the way the world works, I stumbled across a podcast not long after that with these 2 brilliant authors of the book called Burnout, Emily and Amelia Nagoski. I always say their name wrong. Anyway, the book is called Burnout. It's very easy to find. And they had a chapter about exactly that, like what to do to re-regulate your body, to close the stress cycle. So it really was that sense of, first of all, the curiosity is around how do I survive? Now it's around how do I help people? How do I have a big impact? How do I really shift the conversation and the paradigm around grief in our culture? And that's where my curiosity, leads me now.
I love that conscious and being curious, being present and the curious part is I've always been a learner and the always wanted to know more about and even topics like now I'll think of something and I'll go on to chat GPT or just on the internet and just type in what does this mean and how can I find out more about this. So, being curious and spending your life being curious is so important because I think a lot of times people think, you finish high school or college and then that's it. You go to work and you don't have to think about anything anymore, right? But I think we really need to have a whole lifetime of being curious and grief really does change us when we lose somebody, through whatever means, we are forever changed. We have that transformation. And how do we move forward now with this new identity and being who we are without this person or without that piece of us that was lost? And yeah, thank you so much for joining us in this book and for being part of it and sharing your story.
Thank you.
Yes.
Alicia, would you like to share a little bit?
Hi, Sally. Absolutely. I'm grateful to be here. I'm listening to each one of you and just nodding my head. I think my head's getting tired, but I can just so relate. After this morning, my cup has just been full all day. Just for me, and I shared a little bit this morning. My mom went to be with the Lord just 4 weeks ago. So a lot of feelings have resurfaced in early grief. And y'all know what I mean, just those early days. And my gift after I lost my son almost 6 years ago was my sweet Callie Ray, who is 5. So I can relate when we were talking about 4 or 5-year-old earlier, Sally, she'll just randomly say, well, can I call Gaga today? Or can we go see Gaga? And then I'll have to remind her, well, you can talk to her anytime. We can't call her. And she'll say, oh yeah, she's with Uncle Zane, which is my son. So it is a sweet reminder of God's redemption. And to be honest, for me as a Christian, as a believer, I have learned to practice God's presence. I've walked with God a long time, but I really did not know how tangible his presence was and how he was the only one that could really hold me, especially when you get a call like I did that I lost my son. And Suzanne, I'm sure, and many of us know that call comes in. And I mean, my friends tried, they meant well, but really that was my connection. And so I've learned to rest in that. I have learned that God is good, even when circumstances are anything but good. And he does out of my reflection. And right, that's what I do. I journal. And I even had to go back when I was writing about my son and really reflect on what has stayed with me over these past 6 years, because I'm not the same person in many ways. My chapter's called Painfully Beautiful Life. So I'm still, it's a painfully beautiful life. I will just say this side of heaven, it will be that way because I miss him with every breath. But God has redeemed so much of that pain and restored joy and laughter and all the things that we're meant to do while we're here on the earth, right? And to find things that bring us joy. And so I love that this book here and writing about my journey with my son. And I just said, hey, we're going to go do a book, honey. We're going to write it together, you know? And so it has been very therapeutic. And mind you, I wrote it, last year, and I sat it down. And then we were going through the editing, I guess in the fall, right? Or towards winter. And that's when my mom took a nosedive. And I thought, oh, I don't want to bring this back up again when I'm going through her death. So it's been a really unique time for me, but I have really understood God's grace. And if you allow him, like you were saying, Tiny, he will bring good out of any situation. It's hard to see it sometimes when you're deep in it, but he showed me time and time again that he's good. And so I just want people to know that in my brokenness, he still shows up. He still wants to use it. And again, we do grieve differently. Lord knows we all do. But one thing that I'm passionate about telling people is that grief is grief when you're in it. Please don't compare, because I wish I had a dime for everybody that said, well, I haven't been through what you've been through, or, and it just, that takes me back, because I go, no, and you don't want to, but this is not about me, it's about you, so it brings me joy staying busy too, in ministry and giving back. That's how I have walked out my grief, with my son in my heart and by my side. So
Yeah. And one of the things, I wrote about recently is how healing really isn't meant to make us stronger so we can overcome more challenges. Healing is meant to show us again how we can find joy in our lives. Because I think a lot of times when we're going through grief, we forget how to be happy, because we are going through such a tragic part of our lives that happiness just seems so far away, and that the healing that we need, the healing that comes through time or yoga or writing or whatever it is, or in our ministry or in our other children, finding a purpose really helps us to heal, not so we can be stronger next time, but so that we can learn how to walk in that joy again. So we're not waiting for that other shoe to drop. We're not waiting for it to happen again so that we can take care of everything. I think as women, we try to take care of everybody else. That's our thing. It's, we want everybody else to be taken care of, and we take care of ourselves last. And I think that that grieving really, and that healing part really makes us stop and look at ourselves, and we need to take care of ourselves, otherwise we're not going to be good to take care of anybody else. So yeah, thank you, Alicia, for sharing your story and for being part of this.
thank you.
Betsy, would you like to share a little bit about your story in the book?
Sure. Last but I hope not least, I have written some notes listening to each of you. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to say because I said a lot this morning and feeling a lot, but of course you all just sparked my memories and touched on some things that have really helped me. So if I can just share that. Well, I did start to mention this morning that I wasn't sure how to tackle this 2,500 word challenge, because I have had 4 or 5, depending if you count my first brief marriage, traumatic losses in my life. And they were like in succession. Like no sooner had one ended and I never recovered, but it wasn't like the next day, but in some cases it kind of was. And I asked Kathy how to manage this until I write my own book. She said, well, just pick one, maybe the one that was most impactful, which was my mother when I was 18. And I just had a hard time picking one because it was exactly going through all of them that was so, on the one hand, traumatic and challenging. But the fact that I survived all those at this stage in my life at 70, knock on wood, I'd say the first time I'm really genuinely feeling much more joy than pain. And so grateful for my blessings, and so grateful to have lived this long. I outlived both my parents, my brother, my first husband, and so my father anyway, and to live this long, to realize there is life after death of, loved ones, and in a way, a death of myself, because having experienced such a traumatic loss of a mother when you're so young, and my younger brother and sister, even more so, parents were divorced. So a lot of it fell on me to kind of pick up the pieces. And there was no grief therapy back. We're talking the early 70s. And because it was suicide, because she had biochemical depression, otherwise a beautiful woman with a beautiful life and a genius level IQ, which kind of made her a little too smart sometimes. She went over and over, the depression that wasn't her fault. It just, how can I ever be happy when your mother leaves this world? And it wasn't because she didn't love her 3 kids. She did. She just couldn't take the pain anymore, which is what suicide almost always is. And, over the years, hearing people, insensitive people who didn't know about my mother or dying or how she did, would say, how could any mother leave their children? That is just the most awful thing. And so I was like at a photo album class once, and I just was in the back of the room, and I wanted to stand up and say, I'll tell you how, you bitches. Sorry. Like, people are so insensitive, and I don't know if they knew and they were like goading. That would be really mean, but there's so many things like that, right? Or on Mother's Day, it was so hard, and the world just doesn't really think about these things enough, especially when back then we didn't talk about parents divorced before that was a thing, and death, and God forbid suicide. So, but I survived all that. And there have been times I was sobbing on the floor. Someone mentioned sobbing, and I didn't know how I could get up, go on. My father's wife, obviously not my mom, pushed him into having some experimental surgery for Parkinson's, and that took his life, and she changed his will, and a lot of anger about that. And when I heard she was remarried and thriving, I just got so mad, and I was like kicking and screaming like a baby on the floor. Life is not fair. This is so wrong. And I got up. But, crying does help, because you get it out of your system and you pick up the pieces. And same thing when this president came into office the second time, I was a mess on the floor. And I had to call in some friends and say, could you come over today? Because I can't be alone. Call for help, right? And I have prayed to my loved ones up there at times when I really felt like I couldn't cope anymore. People talk about getting down on their hands and knees, and I've done that a few times, even if not physically, then just like, I'm at a loss. I cannot get through this. And I swear every time something has appeared pretty quickly to make me feel like, was that a coincidence or not? And that's my version of believing in God or a higher power. We're Jewish, so it's slightly different approach, but it's all one God. And whatever your interpretation of that is, I have felt it in the unbelievable ways I met my husband, like against the odds. Found out I was pregnant on my 20th anniversary of my mother's passing with my daughter, who I named after my mother, just all these things. And even how I found my husband, and how we just found a house that we're moving to that is the perfect place for us, and against the odds. Like, how did that even happen? We weren't even looking, I feel like those are, they call them God winks. Those are signs. And so I have their pictures in a prominent place where I go up and down the stairs all the time. And even just doing laundry, I blow a kiss at them, say, thank you, thank you, thank you. And that feels really good. And that's part of what helped me heal, was realizing they're not gone. They're there. And what else? I think I'm almost finished. Self-care is absolutely important. I'm taking care of literally tried to save all those people in my chapter title, and the planet. Yeah, well, didn't do too well. But of course, if I don't take care of myself, then that's the ultimate tragedy, right? And because when we go through so much trauma, in my case, kind of succession of losses, it takes a toll on your heart. Like, I wonder, how could I be healthy with all that sadness and grief? But someone made sure I somehow did not take it in to a level where it made me sick, and I didn't turn to drugs and drinking. Sometimes I wonder why I didn't, but I just was sad all the time, but I kept it in. But I don't feel that way anymore. So that's what I wanted to share. And this next week, March 9th, will be 25 years since my dear father passed away. And I've been wanting to write his wife a letter for all these years. I've been writing it in my head, and I want to write it, and I want to send it. I really need to do that. I think that will complete my process. And yeah.
Write that letter, Betsy.
Write it and send it. People are like, why you don't have to send it?
You don't
I
have
want
to send it,
it.
but you can
I
write
want
it for
she-
sure.
Yeah, write it.
she's still getting checks from him. She can handle it. I'm going to send
Write
it.
it. Definitely write it.
Write it, yeah.
Going to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And crying does release things, and it gets, it gets um it gets us releasing that grief. And so, I know, I have a hard time crying because I think I want to hold on to my feelings so much that, um, but I think a lot of times releasing it is so beneficial and for us.
Yeah, when you hold it in, then you're causing a whole different physiology to happen. And it's going to come out in some way, and it's not going to be pleasant.
Right.
So the best thing to do is to let it out. And so I'm always, when I'm singing with my band, we do a lot of songs about crying.
Yeah,
And I say, crying is cleansing. Let your feelings out. Holding them
exactly.
in is what will kill us. And it does. I've
It
seen it
does.
happen over and over again with people.
Yeah.
And so when people say, oh, no, I'm fine, I'm like, how do you know that's as fine as you can feel? How do you know?
Yeah.
Because you're holding stuff in, and that's putting you into fight or flight response. And when you're in fight or flight response, your digestion shuts off, your immune system shuts off. You're not functioning the same way. So it's really important to get out of fight or flight and go into rest, digest, and heal.
Yeah.
So I teach very simple things to my clients and my patients about how you can do that quickly. In 16 seconds, you can take your body back into rest, digest, and heal. But you have to know the things to do. And that's why I say it's okay for you to feel all these feelings. You absolutely have to feel your feelings.
Yes.
And when you do, then you can be healthier.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love that. And I talk about that in my chapter as well. I think not just me, but so many of us, especially when it's really a trauma, early grief stage that you're in, it's easy to miss it. Like I was taking care, my chapter, just taking care of my daughter and her grief, absorbing that and making sure she was okay, that I just ignored a lot of my symptoms
Well, yeah.
until I couldn't get out of bed. I mean, it will hit you completely if you don't deal with it. And so, yeah, so I had to learn, and
Yeah.
I'm so much better. So,
Can I share something
Sure.
before we close? I'm keeping one eye on my phone because this is bad news and good news. The bad news is I have not gotten around yet to promoting the book, and it's 10 to 5 here in California because I have other deadlines going on that I'm juggling, and decided to include in my email to friends and family, everyone I can reach, not only about the book, that's what I led with, but also my web YouTube channel where I want people to subscribe and watch. And then last but not least, announce that we're moving soon, and because of want to be close to daughter and granddaughter, and juggling all that. So when I get off of this call, I'm going to start sending them out. I hope it's not too late to add to the #1 bestseller status. So the good news is you're going to get more, I'm sure. And a couple of friends, even without being reminded, said they already bought it and read it and were very moved by the chapter, which means a lot. Um, and anyway, just when I glanced down, I noticed a message from a dear friend of mine who wrote a poem about her son who was killed in a motorcycle accident exactly a year ago today. I can't believe it's been a year. And I just said, I mentioned this book and that I'm on a Zoom with co-authors, and then I'm going to send her a PDF copy of the book and a hug. I just think of all the times this is going to be, not that we're selling it, but offered
Yeah.
as something that could help, especially with the various kinds of grief, the various kinds of losses. And, we're not really getting paid for this. We paid for the privilege, and it really was, of being part of this. And I'm grateful for that. Oh, and last thing, between the grit and tenacity, my professional story, and this, like there's so many people who don't know about all these losses. And I feel like I can just send this and not have to talk about it. And like, you better be nice to me. Look all I've been through.
That's
Some of
so
the people,
funny.
some of the people who haven't been so nice, read this and tell me
Read
now,
that.
would you have been that way if you don't? And also just the professional struggle, that chapter was Yet She Persisted. Like, even I can't believe how long I've been at this when there was no support. But now
Yeah.
that I have survived all this, it's nice to have it in like a package we can send to people as it comes up for the rest of our lives. So thank
Yeah.
you.
I have to
Absolutely.
tell you too, what happened, what you were saying, you were on the phone. I got a request for a new patient while we were talking. Somebody who's been thinking about doing some healing for a long time and finally is ready to do it.
Mhm.
So this must be some magic we have here.
I think
Absolutely.
when you tell the truth and you get in touch with what matters and you share it, I think magic does
Exactly.
happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're authentic about what you go through. Yeah.
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 I don't know
Miracles
how else to
happen
be
all
but
the time.
authentic. Better,
Yeah.
for better or worse.
Yeah.
I just want to thank Kathy and Sally for doing this, and Linda too, for putting this together. I wrote my chapter at least 2 years ago, and I think I was probably maybe the second person that she talked to about this because it took a long time for us to get the 20 people together. But I just really want to thank you for nurturing that and helping us birth this. So thank you so much. Means a lot.
Welcome. You're
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank
Thank you
Thank
all for
you.
being part of this. Yeah.
And it
Kathy,
feels like it was labor, but look at the reward. Look what we got. You know,
That's right.
for sticking with it. I really struggled with my chapter, squeezing it all in. I have one quick question. Is it too late to get my free gift in? I just didn't have time to do that. Does that still matter?
you can, yeah, just send it over to us. Email
work.
the link and what it is to the support email, support@actiontakerspublishing.com, and we'll get it up on the
It's a
website.
list of 10 ways to green your routine.
Yeah.
But I want to update it because I gave it out when I was speaking, 5, 10 years ago. There's some new
Right.
things. So I'll get to that hopefully tomorrow, not
Yeah,
today.
yeah.
Enough going on today.
Whenever you get to it, just send it to us and we'll update the site.
Okay, and what last thing about grief? I think in the earlier call, Kathy, I think it was you said something about the world we're in right now. Right before this Zoom, I did my weekly interview with someone, head of the Union of Concerned Scientists, talking about all the rollbacks with science and, environmental and health regulations. For those of us who know what this means, which is not enough of us in a way, that is so painful. And so that is absolutely is a type of grief, not just the chaos, but the real world losses that make no sense to those of us who are kind of plugged in, tuned in. And so I think this book can be helpful in that way because if you're not grieving in some way because of what's going on with our country right now, you're not paying attention, I'd say, or you're not in touch with your grief. Read this book.
Exactly.
Exactly.
It touches a lot. It touches a lot of aspects of life.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I just want to remind anyone who's watching to head on over to actiontakerspublishing.com/books. Get your copy of 20 Shades of Grief over there and reach out to the authors in this book and I think this is just a great way to heal, to grow, and to overcome our grief.
Exactly. And for anyone that missed the opportunity to be in this book, there's always more books coming up. And the current ones I've got, one is called Rooted in Resilience, which I think is a very good kind of extension of this one. And the other one is Midlife Reignited. So looking for women to
I'm
share
past
their,
midlife.
to me, midlife goes on till
Yeah.
you can be 90. And as long as you're in that stage where you are discovering
Still
new
creating.
things and living your passion, then to me, it's all in that what I call midlife, that messy middle of life, just embracing our passion and doing what's next. And I know for Suzanne and Betsy, this is the second book that they've done with me. So you can't stop. This is actually the 10th book that I've published and the 24th book that I've contributed to. So
Congratulations on 10.
yes,
It's a big deal.
so yes, I find every book has a different theme, and every time you're sharing your story from a different perspective, and yeah, it's therapeutic. It's you grow, you shift, you change every time you put your story on paper, and yes, releasing it out into the world adds a whole different level of growth.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. All right. Well, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for joining us. And we will see
Thank
you
you.
at our next launch. Take care.
Perfect.
Bye-bye.